And that's advice I give to my team all the time because folks ask, right, what's your career advice? And I say the same thing. I said, yes. I said, you want to leave sales and try running a product? Yes. You want to try to be the operator? Yes. Do you want to move around? Yes. And I was terrified after I did it every single time. The night before, you have the feeling in your stomach. And so I think it's important. And a lot of the times when I'm having mentoring conversations, I share this. I think everyone thinks, to your point, that I have no nerves and I'm just cruising. No, I'm just as afraid to take on something new as everybody else is. I've just gotten better at it because I keep saying yes.
Welcome to another episode of It's Settled, the Ametros podcast, where you'll hear authentic stories of overcoming adversity after a life-changing injury and how injury survivors, members, and industry experts are making a difference. I'm Andrea Mills, Chief Client Officer at Ametros.
And I'm John Kane, Senior Vice President of Strategy. If today's episode inspires you, please subscribe and leave a review to help inspire more listeners facing similar situations. Now, it's settled. Let's get on to the episode and explore the human side of workers' comp and insurance claims.
Welcome to It's Settled, the Ametros podcast. I'm Andrea Mills, and today I'm joined by a guest host, Melissa Coleman, our SVP of Marketing with Ametros. She is joining me today for this very special podcast to honor Women's History Month in March and International Women's Day, which is March 8th. So welcome, Melissa.
Hey, everyone.
Awesome. We also have two other guests with us today from the workers' comp industry that I'm so excited to have today. One guest I have known for probably longer than both of us want to say. I've known Carrie Barr forever.
Nice to see you.
Thanks for joining us. And then Kirsten Smyth with Best in Class MD. Have known Kirsten for a couple years now, but so excited to have you on the podcast as well. Welcome.
Excited to be here.
Thanks. So, Carrie, let's start with you. I'd love to hear, just because you and I have been at this for a while, how did you get involved in workers' comp and, how did you find yourself in your current role with Verisk today?
Sure. I'm going to be totally honest and say I'm one of the probably many that fell into insurance and happily landed here. I actually graduated right after 9/11. And for those that might remember that point of history, there were no jobs. So I graduated in May, kind of coming into a terrible job market, having all of the excitement and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and didn't really know where to go. I thought I was going to be a pharmaceutical sales rep and there were no jobs. And I found a little job fair and I found a company at the time called Concentra that was hiring a sales assistant. And I was able to secure that job in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, coming out of college to start to learn a little bit about sales and marketing. And ultimately, it started my journey in insurance. And I've not looked back many, many moons later. And that actual company started a little product called Medicare Set-Asides. So it's predating that solution. And frankly, Concentra decided to exit that business and sold it to a company called Crow Parity. I went along with it. And they were acquired by Verisk. And all these years later, I'm actually still here. So I've actually been at one company that's moved around in the space for about 20 years. And I feel very lucky now to lead the group here at Verisk.
Yes, that's awesome. And I think your career has been so cool, too, just to see you evolve, through a sales leadership role and then now have, really kind of leadership over the Verisk product in that workers' comp space. So it's really cool.
Thank you. I've talked about that, right? It's a scary thought. You spend your whole career in sales. And I even said, and I think this is a common thing amongst all people, but particularly women, I had imposter syndrome for a moment. It's like, what am I doing running this large company? And over time, I realized who better than the sales team, the people that are out there with customers, the people that understand the needs of the market, that are hearing directly from customers, that have been on the street for years and come through the ranks to really bring all of that feedback and excitement to the C-suite, right? So I'm very excited to be able to say that, yes, I am a salesperson, but I am the president of Verisk Casualty, and those things can both be true at the same time.
Yep. And you're doing a great job as president.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Kirsten, you've had a little bit of a different journey, coming from a medical background and clinical background. So I'd love to hear kind of how you got started and how you found your way here to lovely workers' comp.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's so funny. So many people that I've met in the workers' comp space are like, yeah, who would have thought I'd be in workers' compensation all these years? And I mean, I feel the same way, but I'm really liking it. So yeah, I'm a nurse practitioner by training. So I was working at an orthopedic hospital in New York City called the Hospital for Special Surgery. I worked there for about 8 years, and I worked with two orthopedic sports medicine surgeons who are the two co-founders of the company that I am currently at. So we were founded in May of 2020. I joined BICMD in January of 2021, so a couple months after they founded it, pretty early on. And yeah, we're a new company in general, but also new to the workers' compensation space. So Dr. Nachuku, who is one of the co-founders, he worked for a company called Best Doctors, and Best Doctors sort of played a little bit in the workers' comp space, and they were acquired, and their workers' comp book of business was bought by Paradigm, and their sort of commercial regional health book of business was bought by Teladoc. So we saw an opportunity in the workers' compensation space. And we also do a lot of work with professional athletes who are also workers' comp claims. And so the second opinions that we do for those athletes, we sort of saw, why not be able to leverage technology to bring this network of physicians to the sort of industrial athlete, the sort of more average workers' compensation claim. So we have been fully focused on workers' comp the last 2 years. And I would have never thought when I was leaving the hospital setting that I would be doing so much workers' comp business, but I love it. It's great. And everybody that I've met is so nice and wonderful. And so we're really happy to be here.
Awesome. And you found that it's like a different mindset or different shift to really think from like a clinical setting to more of a business development and sales setting and running. I mean, essentially you're helping to run the business as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I do a lot of sales. But I think having a clinical background helps a lot with sales in my role because we're selling a healthcare service. So I think the presentation or the pitch doesn't feel as much of a pitch when a physician and a nurse practitioner are giving it than a sales team. It feels a little bit more educational, maybe, which is the goal. And so I think it's been a successful model that we have. But yeah, it has been a big shift. Obviously, I was not in a sort of business operations role at the hospital. I was seeing patients. I had my own practice as part of the orthopedic trauma group. So it was very hands-on, very clinical. So it was a big difference, but I really like it a lot. I love being able to, know more about the decisions behind how healthcare is delivered. So it's been a great, really exciting journey for me so far.
Awesome. And Melissa, I've been working with you for over 6 years now, but, I certainly don't know your whole journey and would love to know how you've arrived here at Ametros and how you found us and, what that's been like for you so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was hired by Ametros right out of college. Actually, I was our first marketing employee. I had done various internships in like higher education and sports marketing, but was our first marketing hire and really have grown with the company. So I've been here for just about 7.5 years, all the way up now to senior vice president of marketing. So have really grown with Ametros, have kind of a varied background, like I said, in kind of different things. I did a little bit of agency work too. And so in college was able to get quite a few different like facets of marketing under my belt to see really what was out there. I did not like agency life. They do a lot of long hours and work with multiple different clients, but really fell into workers' compensation too. I feel like that's everyone's story. We just, kind of all ended up here. I had been, looking for a job, and actually Ametros's office was right across the street from where my mom worked. So I almost didn't work here because I did not want to be that close to my mother. But it ended up working out really well. So yeah, I think our CEO, Porter Leslie, hired me. And yeah, just been here ever since. And I love kind of all the different aspects of what I get to do in my job every day and have built such a great team. So
Awesome. I agree. You've built a wonderful team.
thank you.
Very cool. Carrie, just kind of going back to you for a couple of minutes, can you describe maybe a pivotal moment in your career that's, either helped influence your approach to either leadership or kind of how you attack your day to day?
I can think about a time when I realized how important it is what we do, right? Because I think you fall into this business, you're working, you're behind a desk, you're out talking to people. And frankly, my husband got hurt at work. So the first time I actually realized what we did and how important it was and the impact of people's lives is when my husband had a workers' compensation claim and was really injured and was very young and was looking at not being able to work and having really bad back issues for the rest of his life and trying to figure out and navigate that system and ensuring he got the right care and the best care and understood how to navigate it was really an eye-opening experience for me. And it made me realize that when we're needed, it's on folks' worst day, right? We say this a lot at Verisk. When people are having their worst day, we have to be at our best and we have to be ready to get in there and help people when they are frantic and upset and injured and financially disadvantaged. And so I think that was a pivotal moment for me to realize how important it is and how this ecosystem is really one of the lifebloods of the world that we live in. And so I feel very honored to be able to work at a company that does show up on people's worst day and helps them get back to wellness, right? And so I think that was the day it became really clear. And also I understood how difficult it was and that there's a lot of areas to really improve that experience so that ultimately people can be better.
Yep. Yeah, I think that is so important for sure. Kirsten, since you've really been able to see the clinical side of all of this too, a little bit closer than the rest of us, what's a pivotal moment that has influenced you?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar, like kind of understanding the impact. And a lot of people ask like, oh, do you miss nursing? Do you miss, seeing patients or, and I think you don't ever really stop being a nurse. I think it's kind of like you just, fit it into different parts of your life. But I think that in the role that I'm in now, you can actually have such a bigger impact on so many more people than I was able to individually, like seeing patient, I could see 20 patients in a day. And that was like my absolute max, busiest schedule. So you contract with a large company and you can potentially impact thousands of people, through a working relationship with that. But really early on, like I want to say honestly, our like second or third consultation that we did for one of our clients was this young guy. He was 33, 35 years old, and he had this terrible crush injury to his hand from a door roller. And the local treating physician was recommending that his 4 fingers be amputated. And, so obviously that's, a really serious intervention for somebody so young. He would be completely, disabled from any sort of work, for the rest of his life. And they used us for a second opinion, and we got him to speak with one of our hand and wrist experts, who's like a pretty world-renowned physician. And he advised them on this, kind of progressive reconstructive surgery that they could do. And he helped find another surgeon locally to actually do it. And he retained full function of his hand and was back to work, I don't know exactly when, but was back to work full duty. And, you just think if you hadn't had a second opinion on that, he would have had that procedure done. And I think, people just don't know to get a second opinion. They don't, if you're not educated in that way, and you have to be pretty educated to understand that you have to advocate for yourself in that way. And so, that was obviously like, we were like mind blown. We were like, oh, wow, there's a lot that we can do here, really make a big difference. So it was definitely the start of our path to be like, we're all in on workers' comp.
That's a really cool story. but also reminded me, my first job in the industry was working for a nurse case management company. And the lady I worked for, she would do a lot of expert opinions, get deposed a lot, things like that. And she was being opposed and deposed. And the opposing counsel said, when's the last time you practiced nursing? Because the assumption is always that you have to be practicing nursing in a doctor's office or in a hospital or some, clinical setting. And she said, this morning, doing this job.
Yeah.
And I was like, I love that. Like, I love that so much because, you're never not, doing your, you're never not a nurse, right? You're never not bringing that aspect to your, to your everyday. So I thought that was really cool. And Melissa's husband's a nurse. So that's really neat.
He is. He also works in orthopedics. So he works at our local hospital. But it's funny, you both have kind of mentioned specifically like the impact on people. And I feel like I have a very similar experience when I first kind of started at Ametros. Like we went to film a testimonial of one of our members and his wife, and they've actually been podcast guests. Shout out Jim and Monica Jones. But I flew out to Indiana where they lived, and we brought in like a camera crew and recorded the testimonial like in their own home. And up until that point, marketing is kind of like, I'm not on the phone with injured workers every day. Like I'm a little bit more separated from that. And sitting in their home, they were so welcoming to us. Like Monica got us chocolate hummus. I still remember it. Like she put out such a spread for us. And hearing about how his injury had changed all of their lives, I was quietly crying in the corner of their house while they were filming this testimonial. It just really hit me, I think, in that moment, all of the work that our team does to make the burden lighter for them after they settle. Like the little bit that we can do to alleviate some of that pressure and some of that stress. It really hit me in that moment. And that continues to drive, what I do today. And just knowing that that's on the other end of the more I can market, the more people I can reach, the more people know that a service like ours exists. And it's really inspiring to me every day.
Awesome. Well, we are, 4 female leaders on this podcast right now. And I'd love to get into kind of female leadership and, how we've all grown into our roles and things that have influenced us over time. So, Kirsten, how's a leadership, look like for you and evolved over time? And, how is it, I'm not sure if you were leading people before now, or what's it like leading people now? And, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I wasn't really directly leading people prior to this job, honestly. I was part of a team, but I didn't have like direct reports, sort of the way that you think about them now. And so I was trying to like learn a lot about, whatever I could when we started hiring people and growing the team. And I was recommended this book by Kim Scott called Radical Candor and Carrie. I think you mentioned that you guys read it at Verisk too. And I loved it. And I really, really try to, and I'll reread it, because I think sometimes you forget about the different things, but basically in the book, and she's a Silicon Valley leader, has worked at Google, worked at a bunch of different companies, Apple, I think. And she essentially sets up this framework for how you can really care personally. That's what she calls it, caring personally about the people that work on your team, and also challenging them directly. And it's kind of like she sets up this matrix of care personally and challenge directly. And there's 4 boxes that get created as a result of that. And it's radical candor, which is what you're striving to, ruinous empathy, manipulative insincerity, and obnoxious aggression. So obnoxious aggression is you don't care about them and you're too direct. And then ruinous empathy is you care about them too much and you're never direct about the feedback that you really have to give, and kind of like navigating all of the different situations that can come up and how to give feedback and how to motivate other people. And for me personally, it just really resonated with me. I think it all made so much sense the way that she laid it out. The book is engaging. And I think directly challenging people or just directly addressing things is my personality anyway. So, it kind of works. But she talks about how, whatever personality you have, you sort of have to adjust certain aspects of your relationships to kind of make things work in a professional setting, but not separating your personal life too much from it, because it's such a big part of your life, right? Your team and work is where you spend so much time, and there should be overlap in that. You should feel that the relationships of the people on your team are really important relationships in your life, period. Not because it's making your job easier, but because you actually care about them as individuals. And so, so I always recommend that. I think it's great. I mean, there's a million different like examples and takeaways and things, but Carrie, I would love to hear your feedback on that book too.
Yeah, I love the book. We read it as a leadership team, and it's right? You read that and you realize, and you can even place supervisors that you've had, in those quadrants, and you realize who helps you grow. The people that take an honest investment, give you real feedback, and kind of broker you to where you're trying to go, right? So I think radical candor is great, and I agree with you. It's almost impossible to separate kind of home and work. And I laugh because I can't help myself. Just like you're always a nurse, I think you're always a mother. And the same advice I kind of think about and give to my son, I almost think about it from my leadership side as well, which is it necessary? Is it true? Is it helpful? And is it kind? Mm-hmm. And I say that to him all of the time. And I say it to my leaders too, right? Because all of those things need to be true so that everyone feels comfortable and that we're making good progress. And so I like to talk about those things openly. I like to make sure, particularly as I, grow in my leadership position, to make sure that we're inviting and making it a comfortable environment for everyone to give that radical candor. Some folks like me are going to jump in no matter what, whether I'm invited to the conversation or not. Others are going to wait to be invited to the table. And those are some of the things I've learned over time that I need to do to get a variety of perspectives, which ultimately does lead to the best results, at least in my experience. So I completely agree with you. As soon as I saw it, I immediately identified and love the book and try to employ it regularly.
Awesome. Melissa, any thoughts or feedback from you on leadership styles and what you've deployed?
Yeah, I think we've been in a lucky position where we've had professional coaching, and I think that has really helped develop me as a leader. As a person, you just have natural blind spots that you can't see, different things going on. And my tendency is not always to be as direct. And I think that's been something that I've been working on for the last few years, is establishing that directness, really giving that feedback, because we all need it, right? And I've been lucky where I have mentors like Andrea who practice that as well, and give me the feedback I need too. So I think having that coaching has really helped me establish, my voice, which is hard. I'm one of the younger folks here, and I think that there is a lot of imposter syndrome that can come with that too, especially as a woman in a leadership position, and a recent mother too. So I just recently came back from maternity leave, and that was a whole other can of worms of imposter syndrome, being gone for a few months, jumping back in, can make you feel like you have no idea where you left off, who you even are anymore. Because I feel like that changed a lot too. So I think my leadership style has really evolved through a lot of those different changes in my life. And, very grateful that I get the opportunity to have access to those resources and those opportunities.
Yeah. And, I think we've now, multiple people have said imposter syndrome. I feel like that's such a, something that I definitely struggle with all the time. And I asked my coach one day, I was like, why do you tell me why? Because I would love to know why. I perceive myself, and I think the perception is that I have a lot of confidence, and, I, similar to Carrie, I can jump into a conversation. I can advocate for others. I can jump in there, but half the time I do feel like I have imposter syndrome. And she was like, sometimes when you have, your careers excelled really rapidly, you don't always have time to catch up to where you actually have been in your roles and kind of reflect on those. And I thought that was really important too, because I was like, yes, that's maybe why I have imposter syndrome, because things just have happened really fast in my career. And, people have always said, should I go to business school? Should I do that? Should I do this? And I'm like, I never went to business school. I can't tell you whether or not you should go to business school or not, or go get that MBA. I will say that throughout my career, I've always just said yes. Do you want to go do something else? Do you want to learn a different product? Do you want to go learn how to run a P&L? Do you want to run a sales team? I just said yes, because I will figure it out eventually. I may not know exactly what's going on day one, but I will figure it out. And then, over time you learn, but not everyone has the answers. Not everyone, wakes up one day and they're like, I'm a CEO and they know how to be a CEO. Or Carrie, you don't wake up one day and you're like, I know how to be the president of this really large organization right off the bat, but you're going to try your best and you're going to learn as you go. And I think we all need reminders of that, especially to the younger generations and things like that. It doesn't all happen overnight, but it can happen quickly, and, allow yourself the grace to catch up with yourself.
That's really good advice, actually. I've never heard of it that way, and it does make sense, and it lands for me a little bit, right? Like give your and frankly, pat yourself on the back for where you are, and that's advice I give to my team all the time, because folks ask, right, what's your career advice? And I say the same thing. I said yes. I said, you want to leave sales and try running a product? Yes. You want to try to be the operator? Yes. Do you want to move around? Yes. And I was terrified after I did it every single time. The night before, you have the feeling in your stomach. And so I think it's important. And a lot of the times when I'm having mentoring conversations, I share this. I think everyone thinks, to your point, that I have no nerves and I'm just cruising. No, I'm just as afraid to take on something new as everybody else is. I've just gotten better at it because I keep saying yes. It's really just a muscle that you have to continue to develop like any other muscle. And so I do think that's one of the best pieces of advice, and I'm glad that you said it, is just say yes and give it a try. No one's ready on day one. And in particular, since we're talking about women, I think in general, not to generalize, but women have that. They feel like they need to be fully ready to take the next step. And I'd say jump, so glad you said it.
Yeah. I say yes and then think about the consequences of that later.
Exactly.
I think that vulnerability is so important as a leader too, to kind of share that with your teams, that I don't know everything. I still get nervous too, because I think as we all kind of reach our hands back and pull up, the next women leaders and other leaders in our organization as well, I think it's important to make them feel comfortable with that discomfort. Like, know that when you become, an executive, it's not gone. You're still questioning decisions, you're still feeling that discomfort. And I think it's important for them to know that that's a normal thing.
Yeah.
And that decisions are going to be bad.
Oh, yeah.
Like that some decisions will be bad. And that I also, for new leaders, I'll also have a conversation with them that'll say, well, let's play out the worst case scenario, because chances are it's not as bad as you're actually getting yourself excited to think that it is. Even in the worst case scenario, what is it? And then we fix it, right? I think people are paralyzed by fear, and so they don't make decisions, when the vast majority of decisions, can be very easily undone. And chances are you learn from that mistake and are going to just pivot and do better. And so reminding folks, we all fail fast, learn, and move on. That's part of the game.
Yeah. Kirsten, were you going to add something?
Yeah, well, I'm just smiling because, at a startup, I think all of that is just even more heightened. It's just like every single day is like, what are we doing? No one knows what we're doing the next day. And so, leading a team at a really small startup too is, making it so clear to everyone that like we are all figuring this out together every day. And I think the collaboration feeling is so special, and feeling like you're part of the decision making and part of the strategy and part of the growth is what is so motivating, I think, to my team, and, bringing them into it. And I think about that a lot. Like, how do you keep that as the team gets bigger, right? How do you keep that buy-in from them all? And I think a lot of it is when you are thinking through decisions and having brainstorming sessions, bringing as many people as you can into those discussions, not so that it gets, too off the rails and, stays focused. But I think that is such a fun part of getting through challenges. And a lot of times my team will have great ideas. Like, yes, I didn't think of that. Awesome. We'll do that. So it's just constantly, yes, we're doing this new thing. How are we going to do it? No idea. Okay, let's figure it out. Next day, it's like all over again. So, but it's fun.
It's awesome. And Carrie, something you just said prior made me think of this lady that shows up on my TikTok a lot. Her name's Mel Robbins, and she was talking a lot about anxiety. And, anxiety is just like the fear in you. But what happens if you feel yourself getting anxious and like thinking about all the negative things or all the bad things that can happen? What happens if you shift your mindset to, well, what happens if it all works out? Like, what happens if it's amazing? And so for the last couple of weeks that I've, since I've listened to that, I've been trying to deploy that. It's like, well, yes, like I could tell you maybe how this sales meeting or this client meeting could go sideways, or it could be really amazing. And we could really help a lot of people through offering our product and things like that. So that's just something I've been trying for the last couple of weeks. And I really think it helps shift the mindset too, to be more positive.
No, I think it's a great tip. And seeing as I jumped off the innovation train at Instagram, I appreciate you sharing, because I would have never seen it on TikTok. So thank you.
Yeah, big TikTok watcher over here. It's filled with a lot of inspirational things, so I get a lot of it out of it. And really kind of celebrating Women's History Month, I'd love to kind of hear how each one of you thinks about, how do we bring up the next generation? How do we help them? How do we help with allyship? Carrie, you mentioned a couple different leadership styles too, about making sure that you give the floor to people who don't normally speak up, things like that. So, kind of how have you thought about that within your role and your company?
I think with intention, right? I think we all recognize as female leaders that you feel a sense of obligation to those around you, right? And so I do that with intention. I understand that. And I have been blessed with excellent people that have helped me in my career. And now that I have that opportunity, I need to do that too. Mentorship's important, right? And I have a ton of mentees. I'm also a mentee to other folks because I think it's critical. And that's one of the first things I talk to folks about, because you don't want to talk to your manager about everything. You want to talk to somebody that's been there, but is not directly influenced by the actual outcome of the decision, to just help you think about it, help you to grow. So I think being, and hooking people up with mentors are really important. And selectively, I will very intentionally say, have you thought of working with this particular person who can help you with this particular skill? And I love connecting people. That's the salesperson in me. And so that is where some of my natural just instincts take over in the operation to say, I know how to connect these three people so that they can learn from each other. And so that's one of the things that I do. I am very intentional about making sure everyone is at the table for meetings and also at the actual table, right? Sitting together and everyone has a chance to speak. And if you didn't jump in, I'm going to call you out so that we have a variety of perspectives. I've also learned that not everyone wants to receive information and immediately reply. So I've done a lot of things around requiring advance notice on agendas and topics so that people can feel like they can prepare, so that when they get to the table, they're a little less nervous. Some of us, again, let it rip and feel fine just walking in. Others really want to know exactly what they're going to say and they map it out. And so allowing for all of those styles to exist in your organization and helping all of your managers realize that that's how you get the best out of them, to meet them where they are by allowing all of them to have a seat. I think over time, we're really having an influence and a positive impact.
Yeah, I love that. I love the mentorship aspect too, and connecting people. I think that's so important. Melissa, what are your thoughts on allyship and the next generation?
Yeah, I think I have a fairly young team as well. So I think this is really applicable. I think giving them just a lot of growth opportunities, as many as I can. So I want my team to be able to take over my job. If I go over and decide to do something else with my life, you want your team to be better at your job than you are. And so I think stretch goals, things that challenge them and push them to learn new skills, and providing educational opportunities. Like I know on our team, we will fund, like if they want to take a course or something like that, we'll be able to share education, the gift of education with them so that they can learn new skills and just explore different areas. It kind of, Andrea, to your point, like encourage them to say yes to different things, different opportunities, and kind of become a jack of all trades in some ways, but really kind of explore what's out there. And I think knowing that might not always be on your team either. So I think encouraging skills that advance their career, even if it means not staying with you too, which can be tough. But I think it's so important that you look at your teams and your people as whole human beings. We talked a little bit about like your personal life, but knowing that they might not be on your team forever and really trying to set them up for their own future success too, where their passions lie.
Yeah, that's a great point. Kirsten?
Yeah, I'm in such a unique situation because my entire team is women, all female. Our two co-founders are obviously males, but everyone else is female, which is awesome. So exciting. And we have a small young team. So it's kind of like there's endless growth opportunities for everyone. And I just really try to focus on, if I can have an impact on these people who then will have an impact on the next people that we hire and who, they become the managers. That's the best way I feel that I can sort of have an impact in the organization as it is today, just because we're small and growing. But I think, giving opportunities for them, to your point, is the best way to do that, really.
Yep. Love that. This morning we were on a call with a client and I told her what we were doing later today and recording this podcast and things like that. And she said, what I think so cool about female leaders today is, and she's a little bit older than me, but she said she said, especially and this is her words, not mine, especially in the insurance industry in like the late 1990s, early 2000s, when, there was, the start of some female leaders coming into that space. She said a lot of people would act just like the men. And I just started chuckling. I was like, yeah, you don't get that here with me. Like, if you want to talk about contouring your face or Real Housewives or TikTok, like we have the space to do that. I really fail at sports analogies where a lot of people excel at sports analogies. And, I just don't do them because that's not me being authentic. So I feel like my contribution is like, I'm going to be authentic and leave you the space to be authentic as well. And if you do want to talk about sports, you'll probably just hear me calling it sports balls. But if you want to talk about, other topics, I'm here for you. Because I don't think it has to be that rigid anymore. Or, it's easy to talk about sports, but it's also easy for me to talk about Taylor Swift and her boyfriend. So that's my contribution to said sports conversations.
And see, and I really can't contour my face or give you TikTok, but I know hockey, right? So I think to your point, right, it's really just kind of bringing your authentic self and allowing everyone to bring their authentic self and somewhat just finding space for all of that and realizing in the potpourri of it all is really where, there's some beauty in it, so, and look, we've been friends for 20 some years, right? And we actually are very, very different women. But look where we ended up. It's such a funny story we've had, right?
It is. And I think you may be the only person I know who can drive a Zamboni machine.
See? Exactly. Look at you. Hey, if anyone needs that, I am, that's a special skill set that I can bring to your team.
Yeah. And then, from, I think, a passion standpoint too, Kirsten, I think it's so cool that you are so active with golf and you had a golf podcast and, you brought that kind of opportunity to more women. So can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think that's so cool.
How much time do we have? I could talk about Girder Golf forever. But yes, we started Girder Golf not really intending to start a business. We started playing golf. We were very curious of what all the hype was about golf. And there were all these guys that would spend hours every single weekend playing golf. And we were like, it must be fun. Like there must be something good about this. And we had never been invited. We had never been invited by anyone in our life to go play. So my three friends and I went and started playing and we were obsessed with it. Absolutely obsessed with it. loved it so much, started playing, started inviting all of our friends to play. And we had like a group of 12, and then we had 30 people, then we had 50 people. And then all of a sudden we were hosting sold out events, 144 people, like pretty frequently in New York City. And it was all women, and it was, the target audience was people that have never picked up a golf club before. It was, golf is really scary. Come play with a bunch of other people who are terrible golfers, have a bunch of drinks, all girls. It was a lot of fun, no stress and pressure. And so many people really loved the sport. And I think golf is so special because you really can meet so many people professionally. I think it's really helpful. It's a great avenue to really spend a lot of time with people and get to know them in a way that not a lot of other activities really allow for that. It's pretty unique. But it's so hard, and it's so like intimidating, if you don't know how to play, and especially if you're going for business, you're going to say no. You're going to say, no, I'm not a golfer, right? I don't play. And I'll remember the first time I played for work, and I finally was like, okay, yes, I'm a golfer, I can play. And the guys that I played with were so bad, terrible. Like, and I was bad too, but they were so bad. And I'm like, they have no problem being like, I'm a golfer, I'm signing up for the golf tournament, and they're awful. So why don't women do the same thing? I'll never forget that. I was like, all of these girls should be playing in these work events. You guys are better than probably most of the people. But, starting that group and having, so many people made so many friends and connections, and the love of the game, that was like one of the most rewarding things that I ever did, because I feel that had we not provided that environment or that opportunity, so many of those women really would have never entered the sport. I think golf is, there's two sort of entry points. If your family is big into golf and you have access to a country club or something when you're young and you start playing when you're very young, or when you retire and you want to play with your husband, right? And there's not a lot of other points in time where you are just naturally going to be like, yep, in my mid-20s, I'm going to pick up golf now. And so to be able to like provide that for a lot of people was really, really special and fun. It was awesome.
I wish I knew about it at the time. I still would say I'm not a golfer. I'll drive the drink cart or whatever. I'm still that one that's afraid to do it. So I love that organization. I would have loved to have been a part of it. It's really special.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The worst group of golfers you've ever seen in your life together at our events.
But fun.
Really fun.
Yeah. Kirsten's a great golf. I call her fairy godmother, because we've been golfing a couple times and she'll help me. I need all the help I can get.
But
good to know.
You are good now. You're actually good now. She took lessons. She was calling them golf classes. She's like, yeah, I'm taking golf classes in Florida.
There's me just being authentic. It's my golf class.
It was perfect.
And I wanted to touch on this a little bit too, with our remaining minutes, but Melissa and I have the pleasure of being part of an ERG, so an employee resource group, and we help lead the women's ERG in Ametros, and I think that has really afforded us the opportunity to speak with other women throughout the organization that we really wouldn't have exposure to, especially if they were in operations or in IT or something where maybe sales and marketing doesn't always get to go hang out in those areas and meet those fellow females. So that's been really cool for us. And then, we have been trying to put together like little events, and we did something for Galentine's, and we do want to do like a golf thing, in the spring when it gets nicer out in Massachusetts. And then we're planning on doing a hockey event. There's a women's hockey team that plays really close to our office. So we're going to go see them in April too. So, just trying to share stories. We've had panelists come on, we've had other people come on, and, I do think ERGs is a great way for, you to be able to expand just your ability, Carrie, to your point, to mentor people or get to know people throughout your organization and share stories and like-mindedness, and have that area where someone call and say, hey, I heard you share this. I'd love to know more, or I'm experiencing the same thing, help me, lead through that. So I think that's been really cool.
Yeah, we have a couple of ERGs as well. And I agree with you. And I wonder if there isn't an opportunity to connect our ERGs a little bit, right? We have our offices fairly close together, at least in the Massachusetts space. And so maybe there are ways that we can expand some of our events across borders so we all really can enjoy some of those resources. We did a financial planning session recently, financial planning for women in particular that wanted to come and ask questions. And we've done several things like that. So I think maybe just continuing the networking across groups, then we can give resources, to an even greater group of constituents. That'd be great.
That's really cool. And also, that just reminded me of something you said to me a couple of weeks ago about when we started talking about how does one get into insurance and how does that evolve over time, and how we've all kind of landed here, but really found really growth careers and opportunities here. But, thinking through how, I think you said, like, most people think about going into banking and things like that, and how cool is insurance that you could be a nurse, you could have a music degree like I do, you could have a marketing degree like Melissa does, you can have all these cool things, but bring it to insurance. So I thought that was really cool when you said that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I learned, yes, everyone hears about everyone leaving the industry, but what you don't hear as much about, and is a bigger issue every year, is talent attraction, people entering the space. And I learned that insurance has the lowest amount entering the space. People are still going to banking and thinking it's this, fantastic career with all this growth. And yes, there is, but there's no better place than insurance. And so if we can, as a group, think of ways to make some of the innovations known and some of the great opportunities known to a larger group of people don't have to start their story with, I fell in insurance. They're going to say, I aimed for insurance because I knew that it was a safe place for me to grow wealth and to grow my family. And so that's something that we're really trying to focus on at Verisk, is how do we attract talent into this industry so that we can, frankly, continue to be there into the future.
Yep. Very cool. Well, with our last couple of minutes, want to leave the floor for final thoughts or things you wanted to contribute. So not to put anybody on the spot, but Kirsten, do you have any final thoughts or things you want to share with our listeners?
No, I mean, I loved this conversation. I think it was so great. And, I think organizations like the Women's Alliance event, the Women's Alliance, we're a sponsor of that now. I think, things like that are so special that maybe we take for granted a little bit that exists, that organization, and you can be a part of it and meet so many people. For me, getting into this space, I think that was such an awesome way to meet people and get connected. Just trying to do things like that as much as you can. And yeah.
Awesome. Melissa?
I was just gonna say, kind of similar, like finding like your own kind of little community, within the industry of people that you can talk to or turn to. I think it's really important, to find peers. I, had a couple different folks that, I have turned to several times throughout my career here to really ask questions and bounce feedback off of. And I think that that's so important. And I have found some of those through the Alliance of Women in Workers' Compensation. So agreed, that's a great organization. So I think it's really important that you find, kind of your people within the industry that you can really rely on.
Absolutely.
Great network, right? So if we're going to just kind of wrap it up, one, I really appreciate being a part of the conversation, because I think having the conversation is half of it, right? Continuing to have the conversation, talk about it, continue to build our network. I loved meeting Kirsten, right? So we're in this space. I wish I knew her years ago to learn how to golf, but next time I'm going to join the group. And so I guess I would just say, yes, networking, join all of the different groups and say yes. And you will be surprised at where you might find yourself. And if you are in any sort of leadership position, always look back for the people behind and around you and bring them along with you. Rising tides raise all boats. Thanks again for letting me be part of the conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie and Kirsten. And Melissa, I really appreciate everyone's time today and sharing your stories and your thoughts. I think it's been awesome. And just a shout out for Women's History Month in March and International Women's Day on March 8th. And this has been It's Settled, the Ametros podcast. Thanks for listening to It's Settled, the Ametros podcast. Find us on major streaming platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Your review means a lot to us. It helps us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. For more information about Ametros, please visit our website at ametros.com. That's AMETROS.com.
And a big shout out to our amazing guests for sharing their experiences, and to our dedicated podcast producer, Melanie Samaran. Join us in our next episode for more uplifting stories. It's settled. On to the next time. Stay inspired and continue making positive impact.